How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Fraud on the Telly. In today's video, we're breaking down everything that happened in Critical Role Campaign 3, Episode 30, an episode in which the party almost TPK'd themselves. Matt gives us our first references to Elixion, and there's a freaking city within the moon of Ruidus. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out some of our other content, like our updated What is the Calamity video, as well as our theory video breaking down the most recent theories for Ruidus, Imogen, and the rest of Campaign 3. Okay, let's crack on, shall we? So where we last left our party, they had just had the big Dusk U reveal, agreeing to let themselves go their separate ways for 30 days, while the group followed Biride, Fearne's mother, off to their secret encampment to see what the heck is going on with Ruidus and the Nightmare King and just everything in general. On their way there, though, the party are stopped by a gang known as the Fist of the Ruiner. Maybe they're less of a gang and more of a cult, I'm not really sure, seeing as they seem to worship Grumpsh the Ruiner, one of the betrayer gods, very important betrayer god in Marquette history, which Matt makes reference to. To know all about it, make sure you watch our What is the Calamity video. But in short, Grumpsh attempted to destroy the continent of Marquette. You see, Marquette was once a lush green landscape. Grumpsh sent an attack down to the city of Ank'Harel with the intent to destroy all of Marquette, but the Ruidus-born hero Elixion blocked the attack. The shockwave of the attack, though, destroyed much of this lush green landscape in Marquette, transforming it into the desert it is today. Elixion would sacrifice themselves. Some kind of crazy Ruidus-born shit would happen, creating the Netherdeep, which is underneath the current city of Ank'Harel. You get all that. They get stopped by this crazy Mad Max and very Mad Max inspired gang on a massive automaton, having them surrounded as well with a bunch of gunners, basically saying, yo, give us your stuff and you can go away. Obviously, we know the group aren't going to do that. They attempt to talk their way out of it, but this seemed like it was always going to be combat from the beginning. Laura, though, thinks very far ahead, takes one of their backpacks and drops it close to this giant crawler automaton machine. This is the backpack that had their satchel charge they had purchased for the Death Wish run but never gotten to use, and then Laura sets it off, basically handicapping this machine right from the start of combat. As well, we can tell that this combat was totally Mad Max inspired, as there's a bald guy, a huge massive bald guy on top of this automaton with some kind of basically a handmade Gatling gun-esque machine. It screams, fuck, I'm blanking on the character's name, but you know the guy I'm talking about if you've seen Mad Max Fury Road. This guy right here, we'll put him on the screen. There's a big combat here. It was pretty fun, kind of the whole nature of the combat. I liked it. Basically, Imogen and Laura's move at the very beginning, basically sealing them a large victory. It did come very close, though, as there was a bunch of lightning bolt shenanigans with gunpowder, some interesting ruling on guns. But I mean, it's D&D, guys. It's not supposed to be that realistic, causing this massive explosion, which seemed like at first it could have resulted in a TPK. The party managed to right the ship, though, killing the leader of this small section of the gang, as the rest of them all escaped. The gang learning maybe you shouldn't fuck with random travelers on the road, I guess. Somehow everyone manages to make it out alive, including the NPC Hondir, who was probably rolling death saves for that whole entire combat. They make their way to the secret hideout, Biride and Ollie's, and the Nightmare King's secret hideout. There's a bunch of weird, lush landscape going on inside of this cave. This is from, we learned, Gnarl Rock. We get a really sweet reunion between Fearne and her elf father, Ollie. Again, they comment on Fearne's age, which we finally get revealed, and something that we were right about. It was Morrigan, to be specific, the Fate Weaver, apparently, what a name, who we learn is a hag. I thought it was either a hag or an archfey. It seemed the most obvious, but yes, it is in fact, we get confirmed she is some kind of a greater hag, a hag strong enough to have her own realm, basically, where no one seems to fuck with her, where she can manipulate time and possibly, who knows, even more. Fearne, we know, is very tall compared to her parents, which kind of gives her this hag-like characteristics to her. It's very interesting. I'm very curious to see more about Morrigan and Fearne and kind of her hag-like nature that she almost has. Fearne hands over the lens to Ira, the Nightmare King. We learned that this lens is called a veil scatterscope, basically allowing one to see through any kind of magical protection of scrying and things like that. Ira's plan is to install it into the telescope, allowing them to better look at Ruidus, as I believe it was Ludinus looks through the telescope at Ruidus, and she can see the moon, but she gets a headache, and she's unable to really get any further details besides the moon in this kind of close-up object. Ollie tells us again the story of how they procured the Moontide crown from the Unseelie, and how the Unseelie were trying to hide the fact that Ruidus's light was in certain aspects of the Feywild, and they saw the Unseelie working with, we know to be Otahan. As well, there was an older elf man there who is possibly Ludinus Da'leth from Campaign 2, the leader of the Cerberus Assembly, and just overall not a good guy. It would make the most sense, but obviously this could be another character. We know Ludinus is pretty old, even for an elf. We know that Ludinus has a lot of grudges still and some weird grand ambitions, so this does seem like something that's right up of their alley. Travis as well. We just need to take a second and talk about Travis. Since the Ixu Calamity, Travis has been on one. This guy has been unleashed. His mind, his third eye is like opening, and he just sees everything. Obviously, we had the Epic Dusk call out a few episodes ago, but as well, in this episode, Travis has two big kind of leaps connections that he makes. You see, Chetney seems to have some kind of a hunch that whatever this telescope is that's being built by Ira here is the same thing that was being built by the Unseelie in the Feywild. Now, there's no real proof to this. We don't have any confirmation, but some things start to fall into line to sure suggest the Nightmare King seems to be up to something, and they know more than they let on. You see, Fearne makes a realization. If her grandmother is a hag, and hags make deals, was she some kind of a deal that was made? Whether it was between her parents, but it seems more likely it was between Ira, the Nightmare King, and Morgan, Fearne's hag grandmother, who's not really her grandmother. The deal seems to be to create this lens for Fearne. Hags obviously will barter for your firstborn. That's nothing new. We know that hags and devils and things like that. So this seems very much like the case. Now, why would Ira do that? What is Ira building? Is this just a telescope? Something leads me to believe that it's more than that. Ira installs the lens, allowing for Imogen and then Orem to look through it. Orem, with his insane perception, spots something in the moon. First, they see that there is a weave around the moon, some kind of, well, what looks to be a prison, for lack of a better word, that is kind of constricting Ruidus and its flares within itself. Then there is a gap that is within the kind of the flame of this moon, or whatever, the red mist as clouds, and Orem sees a city, and then the episode cuts. Now, obviously, a lot of questions about this city, and we'll get further into that in a second, but obviously it seems like Ira, the Nightmare King, knows way more than they let on. Imogen tries to kind of manipulate an insight check out of him to see if he does know more than that, but it doesn't seem like they actually know, as Imogen says, oh, it looks like a prison for a god, as we learn that there are the two missing gods that happened early in the founding. The theory then that is prevalent among the community is that this moon is in fact a prison for these two gods. This theory still holds, by the way, and we'll get to why in a second. But Ira, it seems, while semi-feigning ignorance, my guess would be they already knew this, or knew something. The idea is then that the machine that was being built by the Unseelie court and potentially these other Exandrians was this telescope-like machine. Ira is then just copying the machine, taking the Moontide crown that was in the machine in the Feywild, and assumingly putting it where it would be in this machine, allowing it to do something. We're not sure. Now, one idea is that this machine is not just a telescope. It's potentially some kind of a gun, a space cannon that could blow up the moon. Very Legend of Zelda-esque style, releasing whatever inside it. Travis as well does something else that's kind of odd at the end of the episode as it's ending. There's a back and forth between Matt and Liam. They're talking about how Liam's character can see everything, and talking about the moon specifically, and then Travis, in a side little, just aside, says, call it by its real name, Matt. Matt looks very confused and says, I don't know what that means, but there was almost kind of like a face of panic over his face whenever this happened. It was a really odd interaction, one that kind of Travis has been making pretty regularly around, just throwing out these random ideas, these truths that he seems to think is going on. Now, I don't know what that means. Travis seems to have an inkling on what he thinks the city means, or possibly the moon that we're talking about. There's so many theories. We're going to get into them all right now. Time for some unbridled speculation time. What's going on with this city? Obviously, first assumption is that it's Avalier, but that doesn't seem to make sense. We know that Avalier crashed to the ground. It's possible that some shenanigans happened afterwards, but it doesn't make sense, as we know that Ruidus was created sometime in the founding, if we're to believe everything that we learned a few episodes ago. So this seems to rule it out, as we know that Ruidus was around in EXU Calamity, so it doesn't seem like it could be Avalier. Well, there's a lot of theories that this could be some kind of a tie-in to Spelljammer, a D&D setting-esque new material that is very, very intricate on, you know, astral seas, space travel, going through dimensions, going to different planes. So there's some kind of idea that this could be kind of an implementation of a Spelljammer-esque city further on down the line in the future of Critical Role and kind of D&D modules, because we know that they like to interlink these things, right? Now, the reveal of this city does not necessarily rule the god theories out, because we know that there's still these two missing gods. Matt gave us this information. He probably didn't give us this information for no reason. Well, we ask ourselves, what does a god need? Even an imprisoned god? Well, they would need followers. They need worshippers to contain their power still. We know that a lot of, you know, power from deities in Dungeons and Dragons derives from belief from followers in their god. So, what if, early founding, there were actually a lot of mortals around in the world? Mortals were created, and there were such mortals that worshipped these two missing gods. Possibly these missing gods were punished for some behavior that happened during the founding, before the schism, before the betrayers became the betrayers, and everyone was just all happy and friendly with each other, or so we're told. What if then their worshippers were imprisoned in the gods with this city? Now, this seems like a bit of a long stretch, but we just really don't know. Obviously, people's immediate minds go to Cognosa and Aeor and things like that, but it doesn't seem like it's as simple as another flying city. Obviously, this stuff happened in the founding. It happened pre-Calamity. It seemed to happen even pre-Schism. Most likely, this is something new that hasn't been introduced yet. What that is, really hard to know. Really hard to know. It seems that Ruidus also has this very intricate link with the Feywild, which would make sense because we know that the Moonweaver, the goddess, is very also intricately linked with the Feywild. Also, they're the representation of the moon, as it is the Moonweaver's blessing, which allows the light of the moon of Catha to enter the Feywild. So something's going on here with moons, with gods. There's probably something interlinked with the Moonweaver, if I had to guess, as well, going on here. I'm super excited with where the story is going right now. I love the pace that it's really started to pick up. This was a big problem that people had complained about with Campaign 3, and it really seems like we're really starting to get into the thick of things. However, we know the pace is probably going to be a little slow now, because this was only like 1 day of game time, maybe even less than a day of game time in game, and we know there's 30 days until the apogee solstice, where everything's really going to kick off, and it seems like they're going to try to crack open this moon or crash it down into the earth, Majora's Mask style. Something's going to happen that we know they're working towards in 30 days. It's most likely that the Moontide Crown is probably going to be stolen back, because it seems like it's almost a necessity for the Unseelie Court to do whatever it is they're trying to do. So I would imagine there's going to be an attempt to take that back, or possibly maybe even a double cross from Ira. We really don't know. The Nightmare King is the big outlier here. They are the big outlier. They're a necessity for what needs to happen with Bell's Hells, as it seems like they're probably the only one that knows how to work this machinery and build what needs to be built to do the things they need to be do. But we just can't trust this character at all. They very much have their own motives of what's going on here. So, very curious to see how the Nightmare King further plays out, what the Nightmare King's kind of story is, as there seems to be way more to this Fey creature than what they're leading on. And yeah, what the heck is going on with Ruidus and this strange city that's inside it? Does the city even matter that much? Are there people up there? What's going on? Is it Spelljammer? Who the fuck knows? As always, if you enjoyed the video or learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought of Travis's crazy performance in this episode and his weird offhanded line that he made to Matt Mercer at the end of the episode about call it by its real name. Don't forget to check out some of our other Critical Role and D&D content. As always, guys, thank you for watching my video. I hope to see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. Peace, love. Adieu.